Okay, well, thank you. Well, I feel a huge burden of responsibility here that I hope I can match in some way, being one of the closing speakers at ecobuild. I hope you haven't all come thinking I've got the answers, because I've probably got more questions. First of all, I have to say that I'm very much here on behalf of the Construction Leadership Council. And the Construction Leadership Council is a body that many of you have probably never heard of. We're a sort of a bit of a quango. Well, no, I think quangos get paid. We're a sort of volunteer body that has been assembled from a number of construction industry companies to effectively form a bridge between the industry and government. And so the CLC is co-chaired by the Construction Minister and by Andrew Wolstenholme, who's the Chief Executive of Crossrail. And we're very much there to assist government as best we can in taking forward both policy decisions, but also sort of sub-policy, so recommendations, guidance, that sort of thing. And so maybe some of the things that we're doing at the CLC are, it's at least a route into government, and maybe it's a route of influence that you might be able to tap into. So my particular area on the CLC is I'm running a work stream about business models and supply chain. And quite specifically, I'm running a project on procurement. So the overarching title of my project is called Procuring for Value. And the backdrop for Procuring for Value is really the industrial strategy, which I hope at least some of you might have heard of. So the government sort of response to the situation we find ourselves in, and this isn't, I mean, I'm not here as a politician, I'm very much here as an advisor to politicians, but we find ourselves in interesting times, let us say, politically, with Brexit and with other things going on in the world as well. And part of the government's response to that is the industrial strategy. And the industrial strategy is very much about what can Britain do to actually improve the British economy. So it's quite a sort of internal looking thing to some extent, but it has some really good pieces to it. And part of the thesis, if you like, of the industrial strategy is that there are certain sectors within industry, of which construction is a really significant one, that if those sectors work very closely with government, then we can make step change improvements. And the overarching improvement that the government desires, and I think we all desire, I don't think that this is a difference of the electorate and government, is an improvement in productivity. So I'm not coming today here, I guess, from a sustainability agenda. I'm coming from a productivity agenda. Interestingly, I think the two things are actually the same agenda, because I actually think that if you improve the performance of buildings, you improve the performance of assets, then actually you improve overall productivity, but you actually reduce the impact on the environment as well. So I think that the two things are completely complementary. So my sort of wish list, I actually only have 3 things on my wish list, but they're 3 really quite big things, I think. So as part of my project on procurement, my first observation is that the only way we're ever going to move away from a very, very capital price, lowest cost, often poorest performing industry is if we actually completely redefine really the nature of value. And what I mean by the nature of value is if we're building an asset or a building, we don't really want to know what it costs. To some extent, we don't even know what it does. What we should really be looking at is why do we want it in the first place? What is the ultimate objective of the thing that we're building? So, you know, if we're building a school, the ultimate objective, I assume, is to educate children. If we're building a hospital, the ultimate objective is to improve people's health. And when you start moving away from we want a hospital of so many square meters and we want to spend £10 million or whatever, to we want a facility that improves health over a period of time, you completely redefine the way that you look at value. And you start bringing in whole life performance, you start bringing in sustainability, you start bringing in the actual objectives of the end users of the facility, whatever it is. So my first wish, if you like, is really taking cost out of the equation at the beginning. It will always be part of the construction equation, but take it out at the beginning and redefine it in terms of value. So that's wish number one. Wish number two is we then actually not only measure stuff, we measure loads of stuff all the time, but we actually use those measurements to improve and to inform our decision making. And I've only been working sort of alongside government for about 18 months, but it's been a real eye-opener. Because what I've found is that we are completely overrun with data and information, but we have an incredible deficit in terms of useful information and things that we actually might base decisions on. So my second wish is that we agree some fairly basic performance data, both of our assets and of our supply chain. And I include designers, consultants, contractors, the entire supply chain in that. And then whatever it is we measure, we actually use to inform decisions going forward. So, for example, and I apologize for the example, but it's one quite close to my heart at the moment. If one of our criteria we're measuring is whether or not we pay our suppliers, and we know that really large companies don't pay their suppliers, then why do we use the same company for the next job? It is completely beyond me. So some of this is actually really easy to measure. The wish isn't so much about the measurement. The wish is that once we've got the measurement, we actually do something with it. My third wish is a really, really simple one, and probably not particularly relevant for this conference, but it's what I call the sort of plinky-plonky one. It's like, yeah, but we need to get the basics right. At the moment, we have in the construction industry any number of forms of contract, most of which are amended or changed so that every job that is ever tendered will probably be tendered on a slightly different basis to the previous one. And yet everybody sort of knows that the more standardization you get in, the greater the efficiencies there are. And so my third wish really is that we collectively, the construction industry, and I very much speak as a member of that industry, we put our vested interest to one side and we go, do you know what? This is actually better for the industry overall. It's better for the outcomes of the industry. It's better for the clients that are going to be using whatever it is we're building. But until we can get the various different parts of the industry to put those vested interests to one side and actually work in a more collaborative way, then that isn't going to happen. Now, just as a final thing, I've said what my wish list is. I've been working, and the CLC and my colleagues there have been working quite hard to actually put some of these in train, so they're not just empty wishes, if you like. We have actually established a number of frameworks that will be coming out when the construction sector deal is published, which will be at the end of March, which begin to put a framework in place how we can deliver some of this stuff. And the delivery mechanism is very, very much a balanced mechanism. So it's what industry can do, what government can do. And it's a sort of quid pro quo, if you like, that only by the two acting together, very much in unison, we can solve some of these problems. So no absolute solutions, but at least a bit of a roadmap as to how we might get there. Thank you.